Yeah, Charlie. So what is there new to say about atheism? Not a whole lot. By now, we've all heard the insights posed about atheism not really being a position unto itself, as we do not generally assign a label unto not doings, that is to say, identifications with beliefs and practices not held by an individual. Yes, as we've heard it said many times before, we are not non-stamp collectors, anti-Santa Claus believers, or unbigots, as there is no need to affix any tags to non-positions. So why is there atheism at all? Well, we can gain more of an understanding as to how this title came into prominence if we correlate its inception in the right context. Atheism was a word created by theism to malign those who did not conform to the imposition of organized religion. Much like the words infidel, heretic, goy, or apostate, just to name a few, atheism is a pejorative term aimed to express contempt and disapproval at specific targets. It's not a label that should be embraced or ameliorated, for it doesn't serve any clear function other than to validate theism. If we truly lack a belief in God, then we need not become grounded in a position that gives further attention to religion. Your lack of a belief is enough in itself. We shouldn't feel the need to explain this or justify it to some self-elected theological establishment. For this provides religion with default authority, which isn't warranted, even though we all know they assume it and fully enjoy this presupposed supremacy. Theism needs to be ignored and not given any life by feeding it constant attention, which only adds to its clout by making it the pedestal around which all non-theological ideology must dance around or answer to. Stop this bullshit. We see this type of nonsense all the time. Like with archaeologists trying to see if they can make their findings correlate with events of the Bible. Or even ufologists trying to reframe the interpretation of biblical stories in the context of flying saucers and extraterrestrials. Enough of this bullshit. I got nothing against storytelling, as long as it's put in perspective and given its proper place on the shelf of mythology in the Museum of History. But if these stories are going to be taken literally and serve as enablers of violence, self-importance, greed, bigotry, hate, oppression, and fanaticism, then they belong in the garbage can. Yes, burn all the holy books, if they're going to continue to be such a major source of strife and justification for disgusting behaviors. And the response against this nonsense has got to be a little more aggressive than just stating, "I lack a belief in deities." No, that isn't hardly enough to counter this blight and scourge that has afflicted intelligent consciousness. How about point blank? I do not value Middle Eastern mythology. Period. You got that? I do not value Middle Eastern mythology. Then why the hell would you, unless you are from the Middle East? No SSC Americano? Or a citizen of the Middle East? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. That's right there, Mr. Out Contra Christian man. You hate their people, and you hate their language, and you hate their culture, and you want to bomb the shit out of their country. But guess what, Mr. Out? Guess what? You've been practicing them damn Middle Eastern religions. Yes, you have, Mr. Out. Yes, you have. Why do you give a shit about the mythologies of a region you have absolutely nothing to do with? Because this nonsense was instilled into you by your parents, who also had it instilled into them by their parents, and so on. Wow, that's a really good reason. I can totally see and understand how and why you are stuck there. How very clever and intuitive of you. And why is that? Oh, because long ago, Rome got roped into believing a bullshit story. Because the head up his own ass, autocratic fop, Constantine the Great, got mesmerized by fantastical stories and decided to impose this horseshit by force onto the populace. That's why you think this Middle Eastern mythology is something you should be embracing today in the modern world. Well, isn't that something? You know, there was nothing wrong with paganism. Yeah, paganism. Another derogatory label devised by the church to malign and demonize those who did not bow in deference to their aggressive force. Yeah, the way of life of a people that lived in tune with nature and paid their respects to the natural world was just so wrong, compared to the way of exalting a fear-mongering fairy tale religion that threatens punishments, promises rewards, and caters to the self-importance of arrogant parasites that want to feel special. How very deep and profound. And speaking of derogatory labels, just so you know, if you consider yourself an atheist, then really, you are a nihilist. Case closed. Although some atheists try to circumvent this, don't they? Yeah, nihilism. Yet another label designed to denigrate and disparage those that rejected theism. Although this label was perhaps designed to target non-believers who were a bit more sophisticated and had stronger arguments to counter religion than atheists, who didn't invest all that much into the ideological implications of the debate. So this is why nihilism is worth ameliorating, as there is more philosophical meat on the bones. Yeah, theists were probably a bit taken aback when they were confronted by those that didn't just say they lacked a belief in a deity, but asserted that they didn't value belief systems, and further posited a universe without any objective values, meanings, purposes, or narratives. This was a special kind of atheist. One that apparently needed a new label designed to demonize it. Yes, all nihilists are atheists by default. But not all atheists are nihilists, as some atheists have other bullshit stories they like to tell themselves. And this is the main concern to the address of this video. Atheists are really nihilists, if they were truly honest with themselves. By pure definition, atheism fits the bill. for it negates a value usually associated with the common average life. And this particular value subtraction, albeit simplistic and uncommitted, is particularly touchy, as the mere consideration of such has the ability to inspire acts of violence to save its own face, even to its own peril. So it's a value subtraction of quite an impactful consequence, considering they were only just executing atheists as recently as, well, not too long ago. And the definition of nihilism is the negation of one or more of the reputedly meaningful aspects of life. So sorry, atheist. You are a nihilist. And you can analyze or dissect it from insane angles to try and give the spin necessary to think of it otherwise in your own mind all you want. But that doesn't change the raw fact that you are a nihilist from being the case. And don't forget, in the eyes of theism, the ones who invented terms like atheist and nihilist, you are a nihilist simply by virtue of rejecting theism alone. End of discussion. So I know, considering all of this, most atheists usually like to stay away from the association of nihilism because they have bought into this idea, one crafted by theism, oddly enough, that nihilism is some sort of radical extreme, and that nihilism automatically means that one is corrupted, despondent, depressed, full of angst, and possibly violent. All nonsense characterizations upheld by value junkies. No, to be accurate, the depressed, despondent people who confront the lack of objective meaning in the universe and are full of angst because of it are absurdists, not nihilists. The nihilist doesn't have a need for a meaning to live his life. And this lack of meaning is perfectly fine with him. Meaning, in this case, is simply a narrative, a story in one's head. And the nihilist isn't compelled to invent one, but rather just lives his life and deals with whatever comes his way without the need to affix a narrative to it. If one has a need to invent meaning and to forget all about the meaningless universe, thereby soothing the angst associated with the shock of this discovery, they go the way of existentialism. And if one finds utility in employing meaning, but doesn't lose sight of the fact that it is a crafted device and is just fine with this setup, they are usually identified as an existential nihilist. But to just say that one is an atheist and leave it at that isn't saying very much of anything at all. It's a primitive position. It would be much better to re-identify as an anti-theist, which is what modern atheism has basically morphed into anyway. If modern atheism was really just a lack of a belief in deities, then there would really be not much more to say than that. But they always go much further than this, dissecting all the flaws of theology, pointing out the inconsistencies, the lack of scientific evidence, the stupidity of superstition, and, of course, the character assassinations, the subsequent attacks on the intelligence of the desperate imbeciles who subscribe to this nonsense. This is anti-theism, and between the two, atheism and anti-theism, it is the position with a lot more balls. And it is an important contribution, despite being a turkey shoot. You don't need a position, a belief, a philosophy, or that much intelligence nor any kind of stance on anything whatsoever. Who cares about all that? You don't need any of that to be a thug. Just relentlessly attack theism and do everything you can to brutalize it and leave it torn, battered, and broken at all costs and by any means necessary. That's why the quality of modern atheism, especially of the so-called atheist community on the internet, which might seem disconcerting considering it is an ununified, dysfunctional, raucous brigade, doesn't bother me at all. You don't have to be sophisticated to be a thug and bludgeon theism with a club. Yeah, you've seen it 1,000 times before, and maybe it does seem a bit redundant. But really, it isn't. And it can never be overdone or emphasized enough until the Abrahamic religions are exterminated from the human psyche, which, as of right now, is far from being the case, as these gutter religions still reign supreme, despite the wealth of information available in the modern world, and all the advances fostered by science, technology, logic, reason, rationality, common sense, and the glut of knowledge that can be shared via the global connectivity facilitated by the internet. All of this, and most of you still want to give blowjobs to spaghetti monsters. It's beyond me. But you atheists, keep on bludgeoning. And don't be squeamish about it, because theism deserves every last bit of it, and then some. There's more innocent blood on the hands of religion than anywhere else in this existence. But hey, wait a minute, what about Uncle Charlie? Hey, Charlie. Charlie's a good Christian. I know. You know a lot of mild-mannered milquetoast theists who are good people. But so what? Good behavior isn't an excuse for enabling the evil that is organized religion. But in response, we don't need a multitude of nuanced positions to counter theology. Atheist, anti-theist, agnostic, ignostic, and all combinations of these intertwined therein are not necessary. Don't try to position yourself on the fence, lest you want to get hit by pitchforks and flaming arrows. Nihilism covers it all of these positions, while mildly interesting as positions unto themselves, are all mere gauges and indicators on the dashboard of nihilism. Honestly, besides anti-theism, all of these positions are being way too polite to theism. And theism doesn't deserve this courtesy. I lack a belief in deities. Truth values of God are unknown and perhaps unknowable. The question of existence of God is meaningless because the term God has no unambiguous definition. You spineless wimp. Stop tiptoeing around theism. They don't crucify or burn people at the stake these days, at least not publicly. So what are you so scared about? You can stop walking on eggshells already. Just say it. I don't value a theological belief system. Boom. Done. Pure and simple. Don't feel the need to justify yourself or go into elaborate explanations to maintain the integrity of ethical intellectual honesty. All of that is extraneous and only serves to coddle the tender sensibilities of theism. Fuck that. I don't value a theological belief system, nor your opinions about what this rejection of value means in the eyes of theism. Take that shit elsewhere. Because theism holds no value here. No, not in here. You will find no value of theism in here. See, was that so hard? So don't forget that, atheist. You are a nihilist. So you answer to me. Whatever, man. Don't believe it. And then you'll find out exactly what it's like when you find something you didn't expect in an undisclosed location.